Welcome to From Foam to Fright. In this episode, we're going to be giving you guys 5 tips on how to turn your Halloween yard display into the talk of the neighborhood. The first tip is not to wait until the last minute to come up with a plan and start building your scene, right? So when you start looking into it and you start building it, if you're waiting until the last minute, and I'm talking from experience here, you're going to be rushing, especially as your scene gets bigger, more detailed. You add lighting, you add sound, animatronics, all that stuff has to work together. And if you wait until the last minute, you're going to be rushing around trying to finish stuff up. Me personally, I start planning really in the winter, right? Halloween stuff comes down, Christmas stuff goes up. While I'm kind of in that in-between period, I'm starting to think about what I'm going to do the following Halloween. And some of that may be starting to build, right? I might start building some of the stuff. If it's a bigger, more intensive project, I might start building it so I'm not spending hours on hand in the evenings getting home from my day job to try to do some of this stuff. But you want to make sure you're not rushing, right? And when you rush, there seems to be a tendency to skip steps, right? And if you want to be the talk of the neighborhood, you cannot be skipping steps. So, things, you want to make sure everything kind of blends together, right? There's continuity throughout your scene. And you want to make sure that there's really not any big gaps, right? You can have some gaps, and that's something we'll talk about, down the road. Probably in a different video when it comes specifically to graveyard scenes. But it's also a good thing to mention right now, right? And so I'll mention it at the end, but if something goes down, right, an animatronic doesn't work, or one of your props breaks, right, you need time to be able to remedy the situation. You need to have time to go out and buy something else, or make something new, or move things around to help fill that void. And so that's why it's important to not wait till the last minute, right? You get it up early, you can see how things are blending. And as you do this year after year, you'll start to kind of understand how things work together, and you start forming an idea of what you want it to look like. So it's a little bit easier as you go. But when you're first starting out, you don't always know how things are going to look. You might have an idea, but they're not going to work out the way that you plan them to look initially, right? So get it up early. Mine goes up at the end of August, and that allows me to kind of make adjustments as I go. Part of that is also because I'm a haunt actor, and we start in the beginning, first or second week of September. So I really don't have time to be out there for hours on end, putting stuff up, making adjustments, that kind of thing. So you want to get it up early. You want to see how things are working together, and just kind of get the vibe. You want multiple nights where you can walk outside and look at your scene and observe what fits, what doesn't fit, what needs to be moved, what needs to be changed, especially once you get lighting and sound involved. It changes the whole game. So you want to see, you can't really put a lot of stuff up at night. So you're going to be putting it up during the day. Then you're going to be taking a break. Once the evening sets in and it gets dark, then you can go out there, see how the lighting's working with shadows and the fog and all that kind of stuff. So tip number 1, get a plan early, get it up early, and don't wait till the last minute. Tip number 2 is to have a list of what decorations you have and where they're located. So as you start to grow your scene, you're gonna have a lot of props, right? You're gonna have a lot of boxes, and that sort of thing. So it's important to have a list of what everything is and where everything is. And along with that, if there's any batteries that you have for certain props, or special remotes, or special mechanical motors that are going to be attached to props, you need to have a list of that. So for me, I have a printed out sheet, front and back. It's laminated, so it's not gonna get ruined. And as I add to it, I can either write it down with a Sharpie on it, or I can just type out a new one and relaminate it. But I have the list. It has what each object is, where it's located, so what box is it in, where's that box located? Is it up on a shelf? Is it inside, the mausoleum that I have that's, hollow on the inside so I can store a bunch of stuff inside? What batteries does it take? That kind of thing, and it kind of goes along with tip 1, and not rushing, right? So it's gonna help you in the build and tear down process. So what I mean by that is, when you're building it, right, you're not going to be forgetting any batteries. You're not going to have to run to the store last minute to go get AAA batteries because your lantern, has batteries and you completely forgot about it, right? And for the teardown, it helps, consolidate everything, right? Once, we know more than anything that when you get something and it comes in a box, that is the best way it will ever be packaged. Once you take it out of that box, you will never get it in the exact same way. So if you start taking bigger boxes and combining a bunch of stuff, you have to have a list and know where everything is, right? So it's going to help you with building. It's going to help you with tear down. It'll make things go a whole lot smoother. And it'll help with the design process early on, right? You can look through and remember exactly what you have, what you put out. You don't have to put everything out. You can kind of vary what you're putting out year to year, especially as you start collecting a lot more props. But it's gonna make your life a whole lot easier as you start growing your scene and getting more and more stuff than you'll use yearly. The third tip for you when building your yard haunt, and if you really want to be a talk in the neighborhood, is to have some continuity, right? So any prop is better than having no props. However, you want to have a plan and you want to stick to it, right? The more continuity there is in your scene, the more realistic it is, right? And the more believable it is, the more it helps put your neighbors and the trick-or-treaters and those who drive by to see your yard into the world that you want to build, right? So, again, going back to the graveyard example, right? Because that's what I build. Every prop needs to have a story, and it needs to have a reasoning for why it's there. So, for example, a clown prop in the middle of, or even off to the side of a graveyard theme doesn't really make sense, right? You can make it make sense if you have multiple clowns and it's like a clown cemetery or something. Like, you can make it work, but you have to have a story for it, right? And it has to be a continuation throughout the entire yard of what you're gonna do. So again, you got one clown or a couple random clowns bladdered through. You know, it doesn't really make sense. But if you have a groundbreaker that's coming out from a grave and it's a clown, right? Then you can kind of start building that, okay, this is a clown cemetery, right? And maybe the name of your cemetery involves some type of big top name or something to help people understand that, okay, this isn't just a normal graveyard, right? It's a clown cemetery, right? You know, and that's just a specific example. So for mine's a Victorian style cemetery. And so everything that I try to build and try to make kind of revolves around that Victorian era time. The one thing that I would say that I need to fix, looking specifically at mine, would be the outer boundary, right? So I have a wood fence that goes all the way around, built out of old pallets. It's kind of broken, rickety, you know, boards are sideways, this, that, and the other. And it works, right? But it doesn't necessarily fit like the theme exactly, right? You would expect more of a stone wall that goes around it. You know, another thing is I got a big skeleton. So it's a fountain. So I have a metal oil drum with a headless body sitting in it. It's got a fountain that runs through it that, you know, red water is coming out the top of to make it look like blood. And then next to it I have a 7-foot tall skeleton holding the head, right? And so does it fit exactly with a strict cemetery theme? Yes and no, right? So you got the skeleton that kind of fits into it. You know, the oil drum in some of these cemeteries, you might see these oil drums being used as garbage cans. And in that case, it could work, right? But I don't have a lot of, you know, I don't think I have any spiders or anything like that. I don't, you know, stuff like that. I do have a swing where I have a couple bodies hanging from, it's a swing set that I built, has a couple bodies hanging from it. It has a girl on a swing that will swing. She's animated, so she'll swing. And I also have a ghost swing. And it's one of those things of, you know, would you see a swing in a cemetery? Probably not. But I'm kind of bringing it in with the ghost swing that, okay, the spirits are joining her on this swing set. And it kind of reminds me of those old mansion-style cemeteries, right? You see things like Disney's Haunted Mansion, for example. You have this big, I don't know what era, it'd probably be kind of Victorian-style mansion. And you have this huge graveyard in the backyard that all of the family members buried when they passed away in the mansion or around the mansion, you know, they would be buried on property. And you would probably have a swing set nearby. So that was kind of my thought behind that. So, like I said, you want to have a story behind every prop to help it make sense, especially, you know, as people walk by, you know, especially at Halloween, right? You got trick-or-treaters, you got people walking by, people are going to see things, and not a lot of people will ask questions. They'll just see it for what it is, and it makes sense in our minds, right? They're going to make it make sense. But you will, on occasion, especially if it's real far out there, like, why do you have an alien in the middle of a clown big top circus scene, right? It doesn't really work. You have to have a reason behind it. You know, maybe it's an alien clown. You know, maybe he was banished. He was different than all the aliens, and he was banished out of their little colony or whatever, and they found home in a circus. You know, maybe that's what it is. But you have to have some kind of reason, something that, you know, when people inevitably do ask, because you will get it on occasion, be like, oh, what's this? What's that? Why? You know, you're able to kind of give them a reason and help bring them into the story that you're trying to tell. The fourth tip for you involves electric, lighting, fog machine, that kind of stuff. So you want to try to hide that stuff as much as possible, right? Nothing destroys a scene quicker than having a bunch of electrical cords running through the yard, you being able to see the spotlight, see the fog machine sitting out blowing fog. It takes you out of the element, the realm, and the story of what you're trying to build. You're telling people right away that this isn't real. And obviously we know it's not real, but that's not part of the story, right? You want people to delve into this world that you're trying to build, right? And so if you have lighting, props, or fog machines, animatronic props, that kind of thing, and you need to have cords running through the yard, there's several ways you can kind of go about that. And we'll talk real in depth in a separate video involving electric and sound and that kind of thing. But just a quick thing, try to use black electrical cords, right? You can buy them very easily on Amazon. You can find them at most hardware stores. But you don't want a bright orange electrical cord running through the middle of your graveyard scene. You know, especially that's supposed to be dark, right? It's supposed to be kind of low lighting, some, you know, blues, violets, that kind of thing. And the orange doesn't really vibe well with that, especially when it's running through the grass and the ground is dark, right? Dark greens are okay because it's going to match the grass a little bit more. The light greens tend to stick out, but black is ultimately the best. And if you can, try to run those along the perimeter of your scene, right? Especially if you have some type of barrier like a fence that goes around it, try to run it along the base of the fence all the way around. Ultimately, you're going to have stuff in the middle that needs to run through the yard, but try to have it collect to a single point and then run them together going out to the perimeter and around the perimeter till you reach your outlets. Try to hide them behind props as much as possible, right? Try to hide them in props if you can. One of my tombstones is a big square mausoleum, and it is hollow on the inside. As I mentioned earlier, I use it in the off season to store stuff in, but during the season I put a fog machine in it, and I built it so that fog can shoot out the bottom of it and you don't see the fog machine, right? I also can put electric in it, so electric runs to the back of it, into it, and that's a single source that then I can run a cord out of. If you're gonna run stuff through the yard, make sure you stake it down. You know, the cables, you want to get some of those yard stakes that you can stick in and try to get it into the grass as much as possible. These wires, especially after storage for a while, if you're not using them, they tend to form, right? So if you got it in a bundle that's wrapped up, it's going to stay, you know, all curlicued and round and want to loop. So if you can stake it to the ground, that's going to help keep it straight. You're not going to see it as easy, and you're going to be able to kind of guide where you want your cords to go. And again, you're not going to see them as easy. It's going to keep people engaged with the scene, and it's not going to be an eyesore. There's nothing worse than people looking at your scene and you just see this looping cord running through the middle of your scene. So that's a big one. You know, you want to put fog machines behind stuff, as I said, in stuff, behind stuff. Lighting is a big one. You want there to be some continuity in your lighting, right? You can have some mood lighting, your blues and your violets if you're doing a graveyard scene, that kind of thing. Strobe lights need to be used here and there sparingly. And again, we'll talk about that in a separate video on lighting. But you want to make sure it works, right? So if you have a lantern sitting there, maybe you can put an LED light behind the lantern, lighting up something that, you know, to help give it more light onto whatever you're projecting onto, right? So I have a lantern that I have sitting on a wood stool, a wood crate, and it's sitting next to one of my animated props. She's sitting on a tombstone, and she'll swing her legs, she'll move her head, she'll talk, this kind of thing. But my thought behind it was, well, this girl's not very tall. She's a young girl. She's sitting on top of a gravestone. How'd she get up there? Well, she had this crate. You know, she stepped on the crate to get up there. And she has a lantern sitting there because obviously she has to see, right? So that was kind of my thought behind it. But you could put a light behind that as long as it matches the color tone and the flicker and all that stuff, and to make it seem like there's more light coming off that lantern than there really is. As I said, you can have some mood lighting in there with the blues and the violets, or, you know, other thing, the green if you're doing like a radioactive scene, or, you know, your reds if you're doing a clown top theme. But you want to have that on the outside, and trying to project it onto your props, and hide them behind certain props so that you don't just see the light source coming out. Again, nothing is more distracting than just random lights coming out from the middle of the yard, from the ground, you know, that kind of thing. It needs to have a purpose behind everything that you do. And the fifth tip for you for making your yard haunt in the goal of being the talk of the neighborhood is to have some type of homemade prop, or multiple homemade props in your scene. Something that you can't just go and buy at a retail store. You can't buy at a Lowe's, a Home Depot, a Spirit Halloween, you know, that kind of thing, you know. Especially once you get into the season of Halloween, people look, right? People are searching for things to put in their yard. And oftentimes people will see that, right? So I'm walking through haunts, or going past yards, and I can go, oh, I saw that, you know, at Lowe's. I saw that on Spirit Halloween, and I know exactly where you got it. If you start building some of your props and you can have some things in there that people have never seen before, even if it's close but it's not exact, people kind of, you know, not only is it like, man, you put some effort into this, but also, you know, it adds uniqueness, right? It adds a bit of realism into it, because people aren't going to go look at it and go, oh, that was bought. I know that was bought. And it takes time, right? It takes time to make this stuff. It takes money to make this stuff. But ultimately, if you have the time, some of these props, you know, unless it's like an animatronic, in which case I'm recommending, I mean, I buy some of my animatronics from Spirit Halloween. But also I'm looking at other sites that, you know, actual haunted houses are going to be looking at. And that's it does get pricey, right? But those you can use multiple years, and the the world and story that you put the people in when they look at your yard haunt and your display is that it's not just all store-bought stuff that they can go through and they can pinpoint exactly where you got everything. That's not real, right? You want to put them into a story and into a world that they're not expecting, and that they can look at it and go, I don't know where you got that from, so it must be real, right? Or something, it's not that, it's that fourth wall break, So if you have the time, I highly recommend to, build some of your own stuff, kind of like, my fountain that I was mentioning earlier. Everything there was store-bought, except for the oil drum, which I still bought, but, it's rusty, it's all that stuff, I took a bunch of stuff and I put it together to make something that people don't really see. And if they've seen it once, maybe once in real life. Usually they've seen it once on a Facebook video or YouTube video or something. But you can even do that where you don't have to build everything from scratch. You can take things that you've bought and put them together to make something completely new, something people have never seen before. So that would be my fifth tip, and probably one of the biggest tips in order to make your yard display the talk of the neighborhood. Thanks for watching this episode of From Foam to Fright. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please comment below any of the 5 that you thought were most helpful. And if you have some other tips, go ahead and drop it in the comments. I'm always looking to add not only on my yard, but also to help, there's endless, countless things that you can do to help bring your yard display to life and be the talk of the neighborhood. So if you have any other ideas, leave it down in the comments below. And until next time, it doesn't matter what you make, as long as you go make something. See you next time.